Marcus Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he loaded the last box of groceries into his pickup truck. The afternoon sun beat down on the parking lot outside Miller's Corner store, and his 8-year-old daughter Emma was getting restless in the passenger seat. He had promised her ice cream after their shopping trip, but money was tight this month. Being a single father working 2 jobs meant every dollar counted. "Dad, can we go to the park after this?" Emma asked through the open window, her voice filled with hope. Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. Ever since her mother left 3 years ago, Emma had become his entire world. He worked nights at the warehouse and days doing odd construction jobs, but somehow they made it work together. "We'll see, sweetheart." "Daddy's pretty tired today," he replied, climbing into the driver's seat. As he started the engine, he noticed a commotion near the bank across the street. 2 police cars were parked outside, and he could see officers talking urgently into their radios. Marcus had always respected law enforcement. His own father had been a police officer before retiring, and he'd grown up understanding the dangers these men and women faced every day. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. The sound of shouting erupted from the bank's entrance. Marcus instinctively reached over and pulled Emma down in her seat. "Stay low, baby," he whispered, his heart beginning to race. Through the windshield, he watched as a man in dark clothing burst through the bank's glass doors, waving something metallic in his hand. Officer Sarah Chen had been responding to a silent alarm when everything went wrong. She was a 5-year veteran of the force, known for her quick thinking and calm demeanor under pressure. But as the armed robber emerged from the bank, she found herself caught in the worst possible position. Her backup was still 2 blocks away, and civilians were everywhere. The gunman spotted Officer Chen immediately and raised his weapon. Marcus watched in horror as the scene unfolded like a nightmare in slow motion. The officer was trying to take cover behind her patrol car, but she was exposed and vulnerable. The gunman was advancing toward her, shouting threats that echoed across the parking lot. In that split second, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He thought about Emma, about the kind of man he wanted to be for his daughter, about the values his own father had instilled in him. Without hesitation, he threw open his truck door and sprinted toward the danger. "Dad, no!" Emma screamed from the truck, but Marcus was already running across the street. His construction boots pounded against the asphalt as he charged straight toward the armed man, who was now just feet away from Officer Chen. The gunman turned, surprised by this unexpected threat rushing toward him. Marcus didn't think about his own safety or the fact that he was unarmed. All he could think about was that police officer who was somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, maybe somebody's mother. She deserved to go home safe that night, just like he hoped to go home to Emma. The collision was brutal. Marcus tackled the gunman with the full force of his 200-pound frame, sending them both crashing to the ground. The gun flew from the robber's hand and skittered across the pavement. Officer Chen quickly regained her composure and secured the weapon while Marcus held the struggling suspect down with strength, born from years of physical labor. Within minutes, backup arrived and the situation was under control. The gunman was handcuffed and placed in a patrol car, still dazed from Marcus's tackle. As the adrenaline began to fade, Marcus realized his hands were shaking. He had never done anything like that before in his life. Officer Chen approached him with tears in her eyes. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "You saved my life. You could have been killed." Marcus looked back toward his truck where Emma was still crouched in the passenger seat, her face pale with fear and confusion. "I just did what anyone would do," he replied quietly, though they both knew that wasn't true. Most people would have stayed safely in their vehicles and called for help. Marcus had charged directly into Gunfire to save a stranger. The news crews arrived within an hour, their bright lights and cameras turning the quiet street into a circus. Marcus sat in the back of an ambulance getting his scraped knees treated, while reporters shouted questions at him from behind police tape. He kept looking toward his truck where Emma waited with a female officer who had volunteered to keep her company. "Mr. Thompson, can you tell us what was going through your mind when you decided to run toward an armed gunman?" a reporter called out. Marcus shook his head and waved them off. He wasn't comfortable with all the attention. In his mind, he hadn't done anything heroic. He had simply reacted to a situation where someone needed help. Detective Ray Morrison, a 20-year veteran of the force, approached Marcus as the paramedic finished bandaging his wounds. Morrison had seen a lot of brave acts in his career, But what this construction worker had done was extraordinary. Running unarmed toward a gunman took a special kind of courage. "Marcus, I've been a cop for 2 decades, and I've never seen anything like what you did today," Morrison said, extending his hand. "Officer Chen is alive because of you. The whole department wants to thank you properly." Marcus stood up from the ambulance, wincing slightly as his bruised ribs protested. "I appreciate that, Detective, but I really just want to get my daughter home. She's been through enough excitement for one day." As they walked toward the truck, Morrison continued talking. "The thing is, Marcus, what you did today is going to be all over the news. You're going to be famous whether you like it or not. But more importantly, you've got the respect of every officer in this city. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." He handed Marcus his business card. Emma ran to her father as soon as she saw him approaching. "Daddy, are you okay?" "I was so scared," she cried, wrapping her small arms around his waist. Marcus lifted her up and held her tight, feeling the weight of what could have happened. He could have been shot. He could have left Emma without any parents at all. "I'm fine, baby. Everything's okay now," he whispered into her hair. But as he carried her toward the truck, he noticed something strange. There was a small crowd of people gathered around his vehicle, and they weren't reporters or police officers. They were ordinary citizens, and they were all looking at something in his truck bed. When Marcus reached his truck, he couldn't believe what he saw. His old pickup, which had been empty except for groceries when he parked it, was now filled with flowers, cards, and small gifts. People had been quietly leaving tokens of appreciation while he was being treated by the paramedics. Someone left a note, Officer Chen said, appearing beside them. She had finished giving her statement and wanted to thank Marcus again before he left. "It's taped to your windshield." Marcus set Emma down and reached for the handwritten note. In shaky elderly handwriting it read, "Thank you for showing us that heroes still exist. My grandson wants to be a police officer someday, and knowing there are people like you in the world gives me hope. God bless you and your little girl." More people continued to approach throughout the evening. An elderly man pressed a $20 bill into Marcus's hand, insisting he buy ice cream for Emma. A young mother with 2 small children thanked him for making the world safer for families like hers. A group of teenagers who normally might not pay attention to adults stood nearby and watched him with obvious admiration. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the attention. He had grown up in this town, worked hard every day, and minded his own business. He wasn't used to being noticed, let alone celebrated. All he had ever wanted was to provide for Emma and be a good father. The idea that his actions had inspired others made him uncomfortable and proud at the same time. As the sun began to set, the crowd finally started to disperse. Marcus loaded Emma into the truck and prepared to drive home, but Detective Morrison stopped him one more time. "Marcus, I meant what I said about calling if you need anything, but there's something else. The department wants to do something special for you. A commendation ceremony, maybe a key to the city. You deserve recognition for what you did." Marcus started his truck and rolled down the window. "Detective, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not looking for awards or ceremonies. I just want to go home and cook dinner for my daughter." As they drove away, Emma was quiet for several blocks before she finally spoke. "Daddy, were you scared when you ran toward that bad man?" Marcus considered lying, telling her that he hadn't been afraid. But Emma deserved honesty. "Yes, sweetheart, I was terrified. But sometimes when someone needs help, we have to be brave even when we're scared." Emma nodded solemnly. "I want to be brave like you when I grow up." Looking at his daughter in the rearview mirror, Marcus realized that his actions that day had taught her something valuable about courage and helping others. Maybe all the attention and fuss would be worth it if it helped shape the person Emma would become. The next morning, Marcus woke up to find news vans parked outside his small rental house. The story had made national headlines overnight, and suddenly everyone wanted to interview the single father who had risked his life to save a police officer. He peeked through the blinds and sighed, knowing that his quiet life was about to change dramatically. Emma was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and staring out the window at all the commotion. "Dad, why are there so many people outside?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity rather than fear. "Because people heard about what happened yesterday, and they want to talk about it," Marcus explained, pouring himself a cup of coffee. His phone had been ringing constantly since 6 in the morning, with calls from reporters, talk shows, and even a few movie producers. He had turned it off an hour ago, A knock at the front door interrupted their breakfast. Marcus looked through the peephole and saw Detective Morrison standing on his porch, holding what appeared to be a large basket. Behind him, several news cameras were focused on the house, waiting to capture whatever happened next. "Detective, this is getting out of hand," Marcus said as he opened the door. "I can't even leave my house without being followed by reporters." Morrison stepped inside and set the basket on the coffee table. "I know it's overwhelming, Marcus, but you need to see what's been happening since yesterday. This basket came from the police station. It's filled with thank you cards from officers all over the country. Word spread through law enforcement networks, and everyone wants to express their gratitude." Emma wandered over and began pulling cards from the basket. There were hundreds of them, some with photos of police officers and their families, others with simple handwritten messages of thanks. One card from a police chief in Texas read, "You showed the world what it means to have a community that supports law enforcement. My officers are proud to know there are citizens like you." "This is nice and all," Marcus said, sitting down heavily on his couch, "but I need to get back to work. I've got bills to pay and a daughter to take care of. All this attention isn't helping me do that." Morrison nodded understandingly. "Actually, that's another reason I'm here. The Police Benevolent Association has set up a fund for you and Emma. People have been calling the station all morning wanting to donate money to help your family. We've already collected over $15,000. Marcus stood up abruptly, shaking his head. "Detective, I can't take money from strangers. I appreciate the thought, but I work for what I earn. I don't want charity." "It's not charity, Marcus. It's gratitude. People want to show their appreciation for what you did. Think about Emma's future. This money could pay for her education, or help you buy a house instead of renting. Don't let pride prevent you from accepting help that could change your daughter's life." Emma had been listening quietly to their conversation while looking through the cards. Suddenly she gasped and held up a photograph that had fallen out of one of the envelopes. "Daddy, look at this!" Marcus took the photo from his daughter's hands. It showed Officer Chen in her dress uniform, standing beside a young boy who looked to be about Emma's age. On the back, someone had written, "This is my son Danny. He gets to keep his mommy because of your courage. We will never forget what you did for our family." The Chen family. The image hit Marcus harder than he expected. This wasn't just about saving a police officer anymore. It was about keeping families together, about making sure children didn't lose their parents. He thought about his own childhood and how devastated he would have been if something had happened to his father. Morrison could see the emotion on Marcus's face. "She wants to meet with you again, by the way. Officer Chen. She's been asking about you and Emma every day since the incident. She feels like she owes you more than just words of thanks." Over the next few hours, more visitors arrived at Marcus's house. The mayor came by with a key to the city, insisting on a photo opportunity despite Marcus's reluctance. A local business owner offered him a better-paying job with regular hours, saying he wanted someone with Marcus's character working for his company. Emma watched all of this with wide eyes, beginning to understand that her father had done something truly special. She had always been proud of him for working so hard to take care of her. But now she realized that other people saw something heroic in him too. By afternoon, Marcus felt completely overwhelmed. He had never wanted to be famous or special. All he had ever wanted was to be a good father and provide for his daughter. The constant attention was making him anxious and uncomfortable. "Detective," he said when Morrison was preparing to leave, "I need some time to think about all this. The money, the job offers, everything. It's too much at once." Morrison handed him another business card. "This one's different. It's for Dr. Patricia Reeves. She's a counselor who works with our department, helping officers and their families deal with trauma and stress. She also helps civilians who have been through traumatic situations like what you experienced yesterday." Marcus looked at the card skeptically. "I don't need therapy. I'm fine." "Maybe you are, but Emma might benefit from talking to someone about what she witnessed. And Marcus, what you did was incredibly brave, but it was also traumatic. There's no shame in getting help processing something like that." That evening, after the reporters had finally left and the house was quiet again, Marcus sat on Emma's bed while she got ready for sleep. She had been unusually quiet since dinner, and he could tell something was bothering her. "Dad, can I ask you something?" she said, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything." Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. "Yesterday when you ran toward that scary man, did you think about me?" Were you worried about leaving me alone? The question caught Marcus off guard. He had been so focused on the immediate danger to Officer Chen that he hadn't fully considered the risk to his own family until it was over. Now faced with his daughter's innocent question, he realized how close he had come to orphaning her completely. 3 weeks after the incident, Marcus had settled into an uncomfortable routine of dodging reporters and trying to return to normal life. The media attention had died down somewhat, but people still recognized him around town. He had reluctantly accepted the better-paying job offer from local contractor Jim Mitchell,
mainly because the regular daytime hours meant he could spend more time with Emma. On a quiet Saturday morning,
Marcus was fixing the kitchen sink when he heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, he saw Officer Chen walking up his driveway, but she wasn't alone. Beside her walked the most beautiful German Shepherd Marcus had ever seen. Emma ran to the door before Marcus could stop her. "Dad, it's the police lady. And she has a dog." Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened the front door. Officer Chen stood on his porch in civilian clothes, looking nervous but determined. The German Shepherd sat perfectly at her side, its intelligent brown eyes watching Marcus carefully. "Mr. Thompson, I hope you don't mind us dropping by unannounced," Officer Chen said. "I've been meaning to come see you properly, but the department has been crazy busy with paperwork and follow-up interviews about the incident. Please call me Marcus. And of course, come in." He stepped aside to let them enter, noticing how well-trained the dog was as it waited for permission before crossing the threshold. Emma was mesmerized by the German Shepherd. "What's his name? Can I pet him?" "Her name is Justice," Officer Chen said with a smile. "And yes, you can pet her, but let her sniff your hand first." Emma followed the instructions perfectly, and Justice's tail began to wag as the little girl gently scratched behind her ears. Marcus offered coffee, and they sat around his small dining table while Emma continued to fuss over Justice on the floor. The dog seemed to enjoy the attention, and Marcus noticed how calm and gentle she was despite her impressive size. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," Officer Chen began, her voice serious. "Since the shooting, I haven't been sleeping well. Every time I close my eyes, I see that gun pointed at me. My department psychologist says it's normal, part of the trauma response, but what helps me most is remembering that there are people like you in the world." She paused, watching Emma play with Justice. "I keep thinking about how you didn't hesitate. You saw someone in danger and you acted, even though you had every reason to stay safe for your daughter's sake. That kind of courage is rare." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I just reacted. I didn't really think about it." "That's exactly what makes it so special," Officer Chen continued. "When people have time to think, they often talk themselves out of doing the right thing. You didn't give yourself that option." Justice had rolled onto her back, letting Emma rub her belly. The sight made Marcus smile despite the serious conversation. Emma had been asking for a dog for years, but he had always said they couldn't afford one. "Actually," Officer Chen said, noticing his expression, "that brings me to why I'm really here. Justice is retiring from active duty. She's 8 years old, which is getting up there for a working dog. The department usually places retired K9s with their handlers, but I live in a small apartment and work long hours. Justice needs a family, a yard to run in, and someone who understands her value." Marcus looked up sharply. "Are you offering me your police dog?" "I'm offering you a companion who has served this community for 6 years and deserves a loving home for her retirement. Justice is trained in protection and detection, but more importantly, she's loyal and intelligent. She would be perfect for a family like yours." Emma's head popped up from where she was playing with Justice. "Dad, can we keep her, please? I promise I'll take care of her and walk her every day and feed her and everything." Marcus studied the dog, who was now sitting calmly beside Emma, as if she had already decided where she belonged. "I don't know anything about caring for a police dog. Don't they need special training or food or something?" Officer Chen reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Everything you need to know is in here. Her medical records, dietary requirements, basic commands. She's actually very easy to care for. And Marcus, if you're worried about the cost, the police benevolent fund that was set up for you has grown to over $30,000. People are still sending donations." The mention of money made Marcus uncomfortable again. He had been trying to ignore the growing fund, unwilling to accept what felt like charity despite Detective Morrison's arguments about gratitude versus charity. "Look," Officer Chen continued, I know you have mixed feelings about the money and attention, but this dog needs a home, and your daughter clearly loves her already. Sometimes the right thing to do is accept help, not just give it. Marcus watched Emma, who was now sitting cross-legged on the floor with Justice's head in her lap. The dog's eyes were closed in contentment, and Emma was talking to her in the gentle voice she usually reserved for her stuffed animals. "What kind of commitment am I looking at?" Marcus asked. "I mean, how long do German Shepherds usually live? With good care, she could have 4 to 6 good years left. And Marcus, I want you to know that if you take Justice, you're not just getting a pet. You're getting a protector. She's trained to defend her family, and her instincts are still sharp even though she's retiring from active duty." Something about that statement resonated with Marcus. The incident at the bank had made him more aware of the dangers in the world, and the idea of having a trained protection dog in the house was appealing, especially for Emma's sake. "Can I think about it?" Marcus asked, though he was already pretty sure of his answer as he watched his daughter's joy. Officer Chen smiled. "Of course, but I should mention that Justice seems to have already made her choice." She pointed to the dog, who had moved to lie down with her head resting on Emma's legs, looking completely at home. That evening, after Officer Chen had left, Marcus and Emma sat on the front porch watching the sunset. Emma hadn't stopped talking about Justice since the moment she left. "Dad, did you see how soft her ears were? And how she knew to sit when Officer Chen told her to? I bet I could teach her tricks and take her to the park and everything." Marcus smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "Emma, having a dog is a big responsibility. They need to be walked every day, even when it's raining or snowing. They need to go to the vet when they're sick, and that costs money. Are you sure you're ready for all that?" Emma nodded emphatically. "I'm 8 now, Dad. I'm old enough to help take care of a dog. And Justice isn't just any dog. She's a hero dog just like you're a hero dad." The comparison surprised Marcus. He had never thought of himself as a hero, and he wasn't entirely comfortable with Emma seeing him that way. But as he considered Officer Chen's offer, he realized that maybe accepting Justice would be good for both of them. The call came at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. Marcus jolted awake to the sound of his phone ringing, his first instinct being panic that something had happened to Emma. But when he answered, it was Detective Morrison's voice on the other end. "Marcus, I need you to stay calm, but there's been a situation. Someone tried to break into your house tonight." Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What do you mean, tried? Is Emma okay?" "Emma's fine. She's safe. But you need to know what happened. Your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, called 911 around midnight when she heard barking and what sounded like someone screaming in your backyard." Marcus looked around his bedroom, confused. He and Emma were both home and safe. "Detective, I don't understand. There's no one here but us. Marcus, where's Justice?" The question hit him like a cold wave. Justice had been living with them for 2 months now, and she had settled into their routine perfectly. Every night she slept in the hallway between Marcus's room and Emma's, positioned where she could protect them both. But now, looking toward the hallway, he realized he couldn't see her familiar silhouette. "Justice?" "Here, girl," Marcus called softly, not wanting to wake Emma. There was no response, no sound of paws on the wooden floor. "She's not here," Marcus told Morrison, a growing sense of unease filling his stomach. "What exactly happened at my house?" Morrison's voice was careful and controlled. "We found evidence that someone tried to break in through your back door. There are pry marks on the frame and footprints in the mud under your kitchen window. But Marcus, we also found blood trail leading from your back door to the street, and Justice was discovered 3 blocks away, standing guard over a man who was lying unconscious on the sidewalk." Marcus was already getting dressed, his heart pounding. "Is she hurt? Is Justice injured?" "She has some cuts on her front paws and what looks like bite marks on her muzzle, but the vet says she'll be fine. The man she was guarding is in the hospital with severe lacerations and what appears to be a concussion. Marcus, it looks like Justice chased an intruder away from your house and held him until we could arrive. Within 20 minutes, Marcus had arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch Emma and was driving to the police station. The events of the evening were starting to sink in. Someone had tried to break into his home while he and Emma were sleeping, and Justice had stopped them. At the station, Marcus found Justice in the break room, lying on a blanket with her front paws bandaged. When she saw him, her tail began wagging weakly and she tried to stand up. "Easy, girl. Marcus said, kneeling beside her and gently stroking her head. "You did good, Justice. You did real good." Officer Chen was sitting nearby, looking relieved to see Marcus arrive. "The vet says she'll make a full recovery, but Marcus, you need to understand what she did tonight. According to the evidence, she chased that man for 3 blocks and then stood over him to prevent his escape. She could have killed him if she wanted to, but she didn't. She held him for us." Detective Morrison appeared in the doorway with a cup of coffee and a grim expression. "Marcus, we need to talk about the man Justice caught. His name is Derek Sullivan, and he's got a history of breaking into homes where he thinks valuable items might be stored. The problem is, we think he specifically targeted your house because of all the publicity you've received." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. "You mean this is my fault? Someone tried to break into my house because of what happened at the bank?" "Not your fault," Morrison said firmly, "but possibly a consequence of the media attention. Sullivan had newspaper clippings about you in his car, including articles that mentioned the donation fund and speculation about reward money you might have received. He may have thought you had cash or valuable items in the house." Marcus slumped into a chair, the weight of this new reality settling on his shoulders. "So now I have to worry about criminals targeting my family because people think I'm some kind of hero?" Officer Chen leaned forward. "Marcus, let me tell you what really happened tonight. Justice heard something that woke her up. Something you and Emma never heard. She investigated and found someone trying to break into your home. Instead of just barking to wake you up, she took action to eliminate the threat completely. She pulled out several photographs from a file folder. These are pictures of your back door. You can see where Sullivan damaged the frame trying to get inside. If Justice hadn't been there, he would have been inside your house while you and Emma were sleeping. There's no telling what might have happened." Looking at the photos, Marcus felt a chill run through him. The pry marks were deep and extensive. Sullivan had been determined to get inside, and without Justice, he probably would have succeeded. "The doctors say Sullivan will be fine," Morrison continued, "but he required over 40 stitches and he's got a concussion from hitting his head when Justice took him down." She pursued him, brought him down, and then stood guard over him until our officers arrived. It's exactly what she was trained to do during her years of service. Marcus spent another hour at the station, giving his statement and learning more details about the attempted break-in. Sullivan had been watching the house for several days, apparently waiting for the right opportunity. He had brought lockpicks, a crowbar, and a bag to carry stolen items. When Marcus finally returned home, dawn was breaking over the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door with Emma, who was still in her pajamas and looked worried. "Dad, where's Justice?" "Mrs. Patterson said she got hurt protecting us." Marcus knelt down to Emma's level. "Justice is okay, sweetheart. She's at the police station getting her paws bandaged up, but she'll be home later today. She did something very brave last night." Emma's eyes widened. "What did she do?" Marcus considered how much to tell his 8-year-old daughter. "Someone tried to get into our house while we were sleeping, but Justice stopped them. She chased the bad person away and made sure they couldn't hurt us." Emma processed this information with the seriousness that had become characteristic of her since the bank incident. "So Justice is a hero too, just like you?" "Yes," Marcus said, pulling his daughter into a hug. "Justice is definitely a hero." As they walked back into the house, Marcus noticed things he had never paid attention to before. How dark the backyard was at night. How easy it would be for someone to approach the house unseen. How vulnerable they had been without even realizing it. Justice had not only protected them from an immediate threat, but she had opened his eyes to dangers he hadn't even considered. The police department's ceremony was held on a crisp October morning, 6 months after Marcus had first charged into danger to save Officer Chen. The gymnasium at the local community center was packed with police officers, their families, and community members who had come to witness something unprecedented in the department's history. Marcus sat in the front row wearing his best shirt and tie, feeling more nervous than he had facing an armed gunman. Emma sat beside him in a new dress, holding Justice's leash. The German Shepherd wore a special collar for the occasion and sat perfectly still, as if she understood the significance of the moment. Chief Patricia Williams stood at the podium, her uniform crisp and her voice carrying clearly through the room. "Today we gather to honor 2 acts of extraordinary courage that remind us why community and law enforcement must work together." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Despite 6 months of media attention and public recognition, he still wasn't comfortable being called a hero. But as he looked around the room and saw the faces of police officers and their families, He began to understand that this ceremony wasn't really about him. It was about something larger. Marcus Thompson, Chief Williams continued, on April 15th, you made a split-second decision that saved the life of one of our officers. But your heroism didn't end that day. When you welcomed retired K-9 Officer Justice into your family, you continued to serve your community in ways you probably never imagined. The crowd applauded, and Marcus felt Emma squeeze his hand. Over the past few months, she had grown more confident and mature, partly due to the responsibility of caring for Justice, but also because she had seen her father become a respected figure in their community. Chief Williams gestured toward a large screen that had been set up beside the podium. What many of you don't know is that Justice's actions on the night of August 23rd prevented what could have been a tragic home invasion. But that incident also revealed something remarkable about the bond between this family and their canine companion. The screen lit up with surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera. Marcus had never seen this video before, and he leaned forward with interest. The black and white footage showed his backyard in the darkness of that August night. On the screen, they could see a figure approaching the back door of Marcus's house, moving carefully and carrying what appeared to be tools. Suddenly, a dark shape burst through the dog door that Marcus had installed for Justice. It was clearly the German Shepherd, moving with the speed and precision of her police training. The attempted burglar turned to run, but Justice was faster. She brought him down in the middle of the backyard, then proceeded to herd him toward the street while he stumbled and tried to escape. Every time he attempted to change direction, Justice was there, forcing him to keep moving away from the house. What you're seeing, Chief Williams explained, is a retired police dog using her training to protect her new family. Justice could have seriously injured Derek Sullivan, but instead, she controlled the situation and held him for arrest. This is the mark of exceptional training and an exceptional animal. The footage continued to show Justice standing guard over the subdued burglar on the sidewalk until police cars arrived with flashing lights. Even then, she maintained her position until officers took control of the situation. Marcus felt a surge of pride and emotion watching Justice's actions. She hadn't just been protecting his house or his belongings. She had been protecting Emma, keeping his daughter safe while he slept, unaware of the danger lurking outside. The video ended, and Chief Williams called Marcus and Emma to the front of the room. Justice walked calmly beside them, her tail wagging slightly as she sensed the positive energy from the crowd. Marcus Thompson, it is my honor to present you with the Police Department's Civilian Medal of Valor, the highest recognition we can bestow upon a member of our community. She placed a heavy medal around Marcus's neck while photographers captured the moment. Then she turned to Justice, holding a smaller but equally significant medal. And to retired K-9 Officer Justice, we present the Medal of Distinguished Service, recognizing her continued dedication to protecting and serving even after her official retirement. The crowd erupted in applause as Chief Williams attached the medal to Justice's special collar. The German Shepherd sat perfectly still, seeming to understand that this was an important moment, though she was probably more interested in the treats she could smell in Emma's pocket. Officer Chen, now promoted to Detective Chen, approached the microphone. 6 months ago, Marcus Thompson saved my life. But what happened that night was just the beginning of a story that has inspired our entire department. Marcus didn't just perform one heroic act. He opened his home to a retired police dog who needed a family, and in doing so, he created a partnership that continues to serve our community. She looked directly at Marcus. Since Justice joined your family, crime in your neighborhood has dropped by 30%. Word has spread among local criminals that there's a trained police dog in the area, and they've decided to conduct their business elsewhere. You and Justice have made your entire neighborhood safer. Marcus was surprised by this information. He had noticed that the area seemed quieter lately, but he hadn't connected it to Justice's presence. Detective Chen continued. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus has shown us what it means to be a true community partner. He didn't just help a police officer once and then return to his normal life. He embraced a role as someone who actively makes his community better and safer. After the ceremony, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and fellow community members. Many people shared stories of how his actions had inspired them to be more aware of their surroundings, to help their neighbors, or to support local law enforcement. Mrs. Patterson, His elderly neighbor, who had called 911 the night of the attempted break-in, approached with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. Since Justice came to live with you, I've been sleeping better at night. Just knowing she's there, watching over the neighborhood, makes me feel safer." A young police officer named Jake Martinez introduced himself and shook Marcus's hand. "Mr. Thompson, I joined the force partly because of what you did. If civilians like you are willing to risk their lives for officers like us, then I want to be worthy of that sacrifice." As the crowd began to thin out, Marcus sat in a quiet corner of the gymnasium with Emma and Justice. The weight of the medal around his neck reminded him of how much his life had changed. But looking at his daughter and their dog, he realized the most important things had remained the same. "Dad," Emma said, leaning against his shoulder, "are you glad we kept Justice?" Marcus watched the German shepherd, who was now lying contentedly at their feet, occasionally accepting gentle pets from passing children. "Yes, sweetheart. I think Justice was exactly what our family needed," Emma smiled. "I think we were exactly what Justice needed too." As they prepared to leave, Chief Williams approached one final time. "Marcus, I have a proposition for you. The department is starting a civilian outreach program, working with community members who want to help make our neighborhoods safer. We could use someone with your perspective and your courage to help lead that effort." Marcus considered the offer. 6 months ago, all he had wanted was to work hard and provide for Emma. Now he was being asked to take on a leadership role in community safety. It was both intimidating and appealing. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course. But Marcus, you've already proven that you're the kind of person who steps up when the community needs help. This would just be a more formal way of doing what you're already doing." Driving home from the ceremony, Marcus reflected on the unexpected direction his life had taken. One moment of courage had led to a cascade of changes that he never could have predicted. He had gained recognition he never sought, accepted help he initially didn't want, and found himself in a position to help others in ways he had never imagined. Justice rode in the back seat next to Emma, her medal glinting in the afternoon sunlight. She had gone from being a working police dog to a family pet to a neighborhood protector, adapting to each role with the same dedication and loyalty. "Dad," Emma said as they pulled into their driveway, "I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of Justice, too." Marcus smiled, realizing that pride was exactly what he felt as well. Not the uncomfortable pride that came from media attention and public recognition, but the quiet pride that came from knowing he had made the right choices for his family and his community. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the backyard of the house he now owned, watching Emma teach Justice a new trick. The German shepherd was 10 years old now, moving a bit slower but still alert and protective. Emma had grown into a confident 10-year-old who spoke at school assemblies about courage and helping others. The donation fund had indeed changed their lives, but not in the way Marcus had initially feared. Instead of making them dependent on charity, it had provided stability and opportunities. Emma attended a better school, they lived in a safer neighborhood, and Marcus had been able to start his own construction company with 3 employees. "Dad, watch this," Emma called out. Justice was sitting patiently while Emma placed a treat on the dog's nose. At Emma's command, Justice flicked her head and caught the treat perfectly in her mouth. Marcus applauded, remembering when Emma could barely reach Justice's collar. Now she was nearly as tall as the dog when Justice stood on her hind legs for hugs. The sound of a car door closing drew his attention to the front of the house. Through the gate, he could see Detective Morrison approaching with someone Marcus didn't recognize, a woman in her 30s wearing a police uniform. "Marcus, sorry to bother you at home," Morrison said as they entered the backyard. "I'd like you to meet Officer Sarah Kim. She just graduated from the police academy and she requested specifically to meet you." Officer Kim stepped forward with a nervous smile. "Mr. Thompson, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Detective Morrison has told me so much about what you did, and I wanted to thank you personally." Marcus wiped his hands on his work shirt. "Thank me for what? I don't think we've ever met." "We haven't, but your actions 2 years ago inspired me to become a police officer. I was working as a bank teller at the time, at a different branch of the same bank that was robbed. When I heard about what you did for Officer Chen, it made me realize I wanted to be someone who protects people instead of just someone who processes their transactions." Emma had wandered over with Justice, curious about the visitors. Officer Kim knelt down to pet the German shepherd, who accepted the attention gracefully. "This must be the famous Justice," Kim said. "I've heard she's become something of a legend at the department." Morrison laughed. "Justice has her own fan club among the younger officers. They all hope their K-9 partners will be half as dedicated when they retire." Marcus felt the familiar mix of pride and humility that came with discussions about their story. Over the past 2 years, he had learned to accept the recognition while staying focused on what really mattered, being a good father and contributing to his community. "Actually," Morrison continued, "that's part of why we're here. The department's civilian outreach program that you've been leading has been so successful that other cities want to replicate it. There's a conference next month where they'd like you to speak about community police partnerships." Emma looked up at her father with excitement. "Are you going to be famous again, Dad?" Marcus ruffled her hair. "I'm not famous, sweetheart. I'm just a guy who tries to do the right thing." Officer Kim stood up, brushing dog hair off her uniform. "Mr. Thompson, with respect, you're more than that to a lot of people. The program you developed has helped bridge gaps between police and communities in ways that training manuals never could. You showed officers that civilians will support them, and you showed civilians that supporting police doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means working together to solve them." As the afternoon progressed, Marcus found himself reflecting on the unexpected path his life had taken. The civilian outreach program had started as a way for him to give back to the community that had supported his family. It had grown into something much larger, with monthly community meetings, neighborhood watch programs, and partnerships between police and local businesses. Emma had become his unofficial assistant at these events, often bringing Justice along. The retired police dog had become a bridge between children and officers, helping kids see police as friendly protectors rather than intimidating authority figures. After Morrison and Officer Kim left, Marcus and Emma prepared dinner, while Justice supervised from her favorite spot by the kitchen window. The evening routine was comfortable and familiar, a stark contrast to the chaos that had followed the bank incident. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Emma said as she set the table. "Do you ever wish none of this had happened? Like, do you wish you had just stayed in the truck that day?" Marcus paused in his cooking, considering the question carefully. "That's a complicated question, Em. I wish you hadn't had to see something so scary, and I wish that police officer hadn't been in danger in the first place. But do I regret helping her?" "No, I don't," Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I used to have nightmares about that day. But now when I think about it, I'm mostly proud. You showed me that when someone needs help, you help them, even if it's scary." After dinner, as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset, Marcus realized how much his definition of success had changed. 2 years ago, success meant keeping his head down, working hard, and providing for Emma. Now it meant something broader, being part of a community, helping others, and raising his daughter to understand her responsibility to make the world better. Justice lay stretched across the porch steps, her graying muzzle resting on her front paws. She was still alert to every sound and movement in the neighborhood, but she seemed more relaxed now, confident in her role as family protector and community guardian. "Dad, do you think Justice knows she's famous?" Emma asked, scratching the dog's ears. Marcus smiled. "I think Justice knows she's loved, which is probably more important to her than being famous." A car drove slowly past their house, and Justice's head lifted slightly, her eyes tracking the vehicle until it disappeared around the corner. Even in retirement, even in the comfort of a loving home, she remained vigilant. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Marcus felt a deep sense of contentment. He had never asked for recognition or fame, but he had learned to use both responsibly. The scared single father who had charged into danger 2 years ago had grown into a community leader who understood that true courage wasn't just about one moment of action. It was about the daily choice to stay engaged and keep helping. Emma leaned against his shoulder, and Justice moved from the steps to lie down beside their chairs. This was their family now, a father, daughter, and a retired police dog who had found her perfect home. They had all been changed by that day at the bank, but they had emerged stronger, more connected to their community, and more aware of their power to make a difference. The porch light cast a warm glow over the three of them, as night settled over the neighborhood that Justice continued to protect, where Marcus continued to lead by example, and where Emma was learning that heroism wasn't about being fearless. It was about doing the right thing, despite your fears.